Hello everyone, coming to you from Newfoundland, Canada. I don't know if that sound is familiar to you, but that's the new 1250 GSA. Do a little video on the lowered 1250 GSA 2019. I've watched a lot of videos and reviews on this bike, what was out there at least, before I bought it, and I had a lot of apprehension in making a decision. I bought the lowered because I basically couldn't get the standard off the side stand, and in 2015 I bought a GS, standard height GS. They weren't making the lowered model then, the lower GSA, so I bought the GS. And when they came out with the lowered GSA, and then they upgraded the engine and the transmission and a few other things, I end up investing the extra money in buying the lower GSA, not without my concerns. I heard a lot of reviews saying that, you know, the bike was a little stiffer, it handled a bit differently, you lost ground clearance, but I guess this is all true. I just was worried that it wouldn't be comparable to the GS, because I really love the liquid cool 2015 GS I had. I really had no complaints about it. So anyway, I bit the bullet and bought the GSA. So I just want to share my experience after having it for a couple thousand kilometers. I'm on a little weekend tour now. This is Labor Day weekend, August the 30th. 18 degrees now, and I'm going to have a decent weekend, 20-degree highs. So I'm just going to do a part of the Avalon Peninsula, Cape St. Mary's Bay. Spent a couple nights in the tent. Just got off the highway, drove for an hour, really gusty crosswinds. The bike is brilliant in it. So first of all, the bike, the research I've done, it showed the lower GSA and the GS with the low seat being 820 mils. I will say that the GSA is actually lower than the GS. The lower GSA, that is now, is actually lower. I would think by near 20 mils. If I had the option, I think, of buying the lower GSA in the beginning, I probably would have bought it just because I was new to riding, and you know, I'm 5'8" with a 29-inch inseam, and you know, I was just getting my toes on the ground with the GS, so to a new rider it was a little intimidating. But with this GS, the lower GSA, I'm almost flat-footing it. Now the suspension has changed in the new model, and I don't know if I like it better, because I did find that on the GS you had more possibility to find more variety, more options to fine-tune the suspension, because in the suspension here, in the dampening, you have dynamic or road. Dynamic is, you know, stiff, and road is, you know, I guess for comfort. Where on the older generations you had soft, medium, and hard. and it was preset. I guess none of them was active, so to speak. With the new dynamic suspension, I guess, from what I understand, it's active, so it's sort of adjusting. I'm getting used to it and I'm enjoying it, but it took me a while. I thought there was more combination of tuning your suspension with the older models than it is here, because you only got dynamic road, and then with the suspension, in the old suspension you had, you know, one up with luggage and then two up. What that did is essentially raise the bike, and it's the same thing here, but it's minimum, auto, and maximum. So I would think this bike on a maximum is compared to the GS on one up. You do lose ground. The only downfall I see with this bike over the GSA is the ground clearance. And again, I've not ridden a standard GSA, so I can't comment. I can't comment on the handling. I'm coming at this from a GS rider. But I actually feel the bike is more nimble than a GS. Like, I could turn it around in a tighter radius. Yeah, I find in the corners, you know, throwing into a corner is much easier to throw around, even though it's a bigger bike. But again, it's a wider bike that with the gas tank, but the weight is mainly in the fuel, the extra weight. And I mean, I think, you know, 600 pounds or 550 pounds, you know, once it's moving, it's, you don't notice any difference in the weight. I actually think the bike is more, it's more nimble, and maybe it's because the bike is lower, the center of gravity is lower. I'm not sure, but it certainly seems like it to me. What else? You know, also a lot of the reviews I've seen on the new 1250, they raved about the new engine and a new transmission. Now, I really didn't feel that the GS lacked any power from my point of view. And that transmission, it was clunky, you know, when you were putting it into first gear from neutral, but outside of that, I felt it was, you know, relatively decent, you know. And again, I have no experience with other bikes. I rode a DR200 to get my license, and then I went right to a 1200 GS, and now I'm on a 1250 GS, GSA. So I have nothing to compare it to. So I find it more nimble. Also, the difference in the power, you know, I watched some of the reviews and the guys were like, wow, I can't believe the power in this bike. Yeah, you know what? I'm not wowing over it. Sure, it's you know, noticeable, but would I have bought this bike just because of the engine and the transmission upgrade? Absolutely not. I wouldn't have. I do like that, you know, I'm a little closer to the ground, that every time I come to a stop, I don't have to pick a side. And that basically, I can, if I'm loaded, I can get this bike off the stand no matter what. A lot of times when I was riding with, you know, with the electronic suspension engaged in passenger with luggage, and I was on a bit of a camber, I wouldn't be able to get the bike off the side stand. I would have to disengage the electronic suspension, get the bike up, and then re-engage it. But with this is auto, I find the height of the bike is the same all the time. So when you put a load on it, I guess after you ride for a little while, it readjusts its height. So now in saying that, because the bike is actually lower and I was used to riding a higher bike, I'm riding around in maximum suspension all the time. Especially when I put a bit of weight on the bike, I just prefer to a little bit taller. But you know, when I'm in traffic or commuting, it's nice to just put it in minimum and have that standard height. Anyway, they also said that this bike, that The windscreen is bigger and more protection than the GS. Boy, I question that too. There's a difference. I feel that this windshield both I felt does do a good job. But I feel this one, the wind is more around your arms. It's sort of, yeah, more around your arms. It's nice and when it's warm, but when it's cooler, boy, you know, it's makes a difference when it comes to some gravel soon. So yeah, so let's try and nutshell it. The engine upgrade, not worth switching over, but the bike handles brilliantly. I just came from some really high crosswinds in and highway speeds, and you know, I think the bike is actually more stable in the wind as well with crosswinds. You know, I heard it, they say that it's more fuel efficient. Can't agree with you, not yet anyway. I think I'm burning, I think it's, you know, I need an extra liter to get me 100 kilometers on this. Stand now. Don't know if I give my microphone enough cord. But yeah, the bike is brilliant, I gotta say. I think it actually fits me. It fits me better than GS. And having that little bit of extra ground clearance. Having that little bit of extra ground clearance is just comforting, not having to choose a side every time I stop. It really is. Anyway, I don't know if this helps anyone. The road is brilliant. I don't know if this helps anyone. Anybody who's looking to buy a lower GS, and again, I can't compare it to the standard GSA. I can only compare it to standard GS. Is that I think the bike is brilliant. The bike feels lighter and more maneuverable. The only thing you're losing is ground clearance, and you are losing ground clearance. This bike, again, this bike on maximum is like actually a little bit lower than the GS is on standard height. The thing is with the GS, you can increase the suspension by going, you know, one with luggage or two up. So you can really increase the height of the bike. I'm gonna get my mirror here so I can see behind me. Yeah, the bike is brilliant on the road, on the gravel bike. Really is nice. And again, I just got the Battle Axe.